we need to talk about Squid Game. Yeah, the hit Netflix series that is taking the world by storm, and you probably have already seen or heard something about. To give a very brief overview, the plot revolves around players voluntarily committing themselves to a series of survival games and duking it out Battle Royale style to free themselves of debt or whatever moral transgression they may have incurred. In this video, we'll have a little chat as to why Squid Game is truly undeserving of the hype that it is receiving. For a series to gain popularity and become widespread, it has to resonate or at the very least entertain its audiences. It's when this audience grows to a huge following that it receives the recognition it may or may not deserve. But the types of audiences Squid Game is reaching out to is a little concerning. The series is available on Netflix, which is arguably the most accessible streaming service on the internet, and while child locks and kid-friendly accounts are available as part of the subscription, technically, there is nothing preventing a young, impressionable child from viewing the series known for its gory scenes of ultraviolence. With such a low barrier of entry, this does push the graphic content of the series out of the cult territory and into the mainstream realm. Before I go on, I do want to address something. The phrase cult classic has been used many a time to describe this series, and while I'm glad people have such strong opinions on what they choose to watch, I think it is important to understand that cult classics are used to refer to titles that appeal to a particular group or section of society. Squid Game is mainstream media. Anything on Netflix is mainstream media. Squid Game is not a cult classic. If anything, it is placed in an ideal position to send not-so-subliminal messages of violence and make other impressions on younger audiences that are not very nice. While it is reductive to say that watching Squid Game will make you a nihilistic serial killer, like how watching porn will make you a rapist, the power of marketing on audiences is undeniable. Countless studies have proven time and time again that the media we watch has a profound impact on our political views, preferences, down to what we choose to have for dinner. And such content is readily available, with 74 million people in the US and Canada, 68 million in Europe and Africa, and 28 million in the Asia Pacific subscribed to Netflix. That's a lot of people that are around a lot of children. This is a very different situation from audiences having to actively seek out series and films such as Saw or Hostel that feature graphic violence for their entertainment, as this would immediately exclude a large portion of audiences that may not fully understand the mess they're getting into. So what does this mean? Children being a lot more predisposed to finding this content and being desensitized to acts of rape, torture, and homophobia. Yeah, we're going there. I'm gonna make a case for Squid Game feeding into homophobia. Despite Netflix taking a very inclusive stance in many of its original series such as Sense8 and You, Me, Her, the series has been marked for its misrepresentation and bias against queer characters in film. This is seen in episode 7, where a male player is forced to commit sexual acts against his will with a VIP who is also male. Despite the character being able to escape this, the scenes are a very obvious use of the homophobic trope. This idea of a raving homosexual that goes around taking advantage of members of the same gender is often defeated by the heteronormative patriarchy in contemporary film, further reinforcing the idea that queerness is unnatural and should not exist, which of course is completely wrong. Having this interaction built into the script perpetuates homophobia being an intrinsic part of a worthy story. And that's the problem. The fact that the VIP is gay does not make him evil. It's the fact that he chooses to be a VIP that makes him evil. It has nothing to do with his sexual orientation and preferences. While some fans may say that a heterosexual assault was alluded to in this series, we don't actually see this playing out on screen. Instead, we are left with a very obvious link that has been established between sexual deviancy and the only queer character on this show. This is not to say LGBTQ+ characters aren't allowed to be evil. Geez, Harley Quinn is bisexual. Yeah, she is. It's not just the Joker, but actually the Joker and Poison Ivy. In the comics at least, but not so much in the movies. See my point? It is the responsibility of creators to consider the implications of choosing to make a villain queer, and also making sure that they represent this accurately without feeding into outdated and pretty offensive stereotypes. As consumers, it also falls onto our plates to be a lot more conscious of the media we choose to consume, and be a lot more conscientious when it comes to the shows we openly voice our support for. In terms of what we're choosing to support with Squid Game, we aren't supporting something we haven't supported before. Building a plot of a game of survival is not the most original one. It all started with Battle Royale, a film franchise that took the world by storm in the early 2000s. Since then, it has gone on to shape and inspire numerous creators of hit series such as The Hunger Games, Maze Runner, and even an anime I reviewed and absolutely loved, Kaiji. It's not like there's no merit to Korean filmmaking. There have been various titles over the years that have offered a unique perspective and challenged traditional Hollywood formulas of action and suspense. Examples include Train to Busan and Parasite, both of which have won numerous accolades and became classics in their own right. However, the pacing of Squid Game does not build on the strengths these tropes provide. The series has been described as a really long episode of Black Mirror. While I am a huge fan of the Black Mirror series, I don't think this is to be taken as a compliment at all. There is a pretty popular moment that illustrates this point. At the end of the 5th game, there is a dragged out sequence of glass exploding all over the players. How dragged out, you might ask? There's actually 54 whole seconds of glass exploding really slowly. You would think that if there was that much glass exploding, people in the room would get pretty hurt. Not in Squid Game. Which brings up the issue of misusing plot armor. After this prolonged sequence, we see the players emerge essentially unscathed, save for a few scratches on their cheeks. The only exception being one character getting a gash. While not every show has to follow the footsteps of Game of Thrones, Squid Game has taken the use of plot armor a little too far. Plot armor is a device used to tell a narrative by usually doing what armor does, keeping the narrator alive despite whatever impossible obstacles they may come to face on their misadventures. The narrative of Squid Game overuses this device to the point where it becomes almost abuse. With every game, the protagonist finishes within milliseconds of the clock counting down, and to add on with the previous example, think of it this way. If glass exploded in front of you, do you think you would get away with just a few scratches on your face? Oh, and don't forget you actually have a couple of friends with you, and they ended up getting these baby scratches on their face too. For a show that uses graphic violence as one of its main selling points, these device choices are sending pretty inconsistent signals. There are also various other loopholes that go unaddressed in the series. Case in point would be one of the games where players had to remove the silhouette on a honeycomb without breaking the lines of the silhouette itself. There were 2 issues with this. 1. Guards were shown to be heavily supervising the entire game. Yet, how does one female character manage to use a lighter to burn the edges of a cookie and then go on to pass this lighter to another player once she's done? Number 2, it doesn't really take a genius to figure out that you can nibble the edges of the cookie away to leave you with the silhouette you want. Obviously, the guards won't notice. The show doesn't leave us with memorable images that serve its purpose either. Because of its sparse imagery, there is a significantly higher chance that you walk away from this series slightly entertained rather than being in the mood to ponder socio-political themes that it was trying to suggest. Through imagery like having the giant robot from episode 1 embody the spirit of North Korea, which is actually the intention behind that choice. It becomes painfully obvious that Squid Game relies a disproportionately large amount on delivering shock value to its audience over any cinematic value. And hey, if that's what you're into, different folks, different strokes. All I'm saying is, if we are spending a significant amount of our time and money consuming such pieces of work, the least we can do is be conscious of what kind of messages they are putting forward and having us and the people around us believe. Think of the kids watching this stuff and what kind of attitudes they may develop when it comes to violence and the LGBTQ+ community. That's pretty messed up. Thanks for listening to this rant. I wasn't sure if I should make this video, and this was very much done out of impulse. But I really wanted to put this information out there. Show some love by leaving a like, or if you are a fan of Squid Game, I'll let you dislike the video just this once. Gotcha!